My adopted brother and I have developed romantic feelings. I don't know what to do. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But here I am. I need to get this off my chest because it's been weighing on me for a while and I don't know how to deal with it. I think I'm in love with my adopted brother, and I'm pretty sure he feels the same way. Before anyone freaks out, let me make one thing clear. We are not biologically related. Alex, not his real name, was adopted into my family when he was 15, and I was 16. We met as teenagers, not as little kids, and we didn't grow up thinking of each other as siblings from day one. But for all legal purposes, we're considered family. That's what makes this so complicated. When Alex first came to live with us, we weren't exactly instant best friends. If anything, we were awkward around each other. I had grown up as an only child, so suddenly having someone else in my space felt weird. He had a rough childhood before being adopted. Without going into too much detail, he had been in and out of foster care and had never really had a stable home. I remember how quiet he was in those early months, like he was afraid to take up too much space. At first, we mostly coexisted. We'd make small talk at the dinner table, and occasionally I'd invite him to watch a movie with me just so he wouldn't feel left out. But we didn't truly bond until a few months later when I found him sitting alone in the backyard one night. It was late, and I was heading to the kitchen to grab a snack when I saw him through the window, just sitting on the grass, staring at the sky. Something about the way he looked, so lost, so alone, made me go outside and sit next to him. I asked if he was okay. He shrugged. I didn't push. We just sat there in silence for a while, looking at the stars. Eventually, he started talking. He told me about the things he missed, the things he never had, and how weird it felt to be part of a family that actually wanted him. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. That night changed everything. After that, we started spending more time together, not just because we lived in the same house, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. We became best friends in the way that only two people who understand each other deeply can. Looking back, I don't think there was a single moment when I suddenly realized I had feelings for Alex. It wasn't like a movie where one day, I woke up and thought, oh no, I'm in love with him. It was slow, so slow that I didn't even notice it was happening. At first, everything felt normal. We had always been close, staying up late talking about everything, texting each other constantly, making each other laugh in ways no one else could. When we left for college, nothing changed. If anything, we got even closer. I'd call him on my way to class, he'd FaceTime me randomly to show me something funny, and we'd both rant to each other about school, life, and stupid things that annoyed us. But then, I started noticing things that weren't normal. Like how I'd get excited whenever I saw his name pop up on my phone, even if we had just talked earlier. Or how, when I was visiting home, I'd spend extra time picking out what to wear, not because I was seeing anyone special, but because he was going to be there. I ignored it at first. I mean, it's normal to be happy to see someone you care about, right? It's normal to want to look nice around people you're close with. But then it got worse. It started with the little moments, like when he hugged me goodbye after a visit, and I felt it, this weird flutter in my stomach. Or when we'd be watching a movie together, and my brain would suddenly focus on how close he was sitting. One time, we went out to eat while he was visiting me at college. The restaurant was crowded, so we had to squeeze into a tiny booth. Our knees were touching under the table. No big deal, right? Except I could feel the warmth of his leg against mine. I became hyper-aware of every single point of contact between us, and instead of moving away, I just stayed there. And then I caught him staring, not in a casual, brotherly way. His eyes lingered on me for just a second too long before he quickly looked away. That's when I started to panic. Because once I noticed it, I couldn't unnotice it. For a long time, I convinced myself that I was just being weird, that these feelings were all in my head. But then I started paying attention to him, and I realized he was acting differently too. It was the way his voice softened when he said my name. The way his fingers would brush against mine just a little longer than necessary when he handed me something. The way he always found an excuse to sit next to me when we were with friends, even if there was plenty of space elsewhere. There was one night that really messed with my head. We were at a bonfire with some of his college friends while I was visiting. It was cold, and I hadn't brought a jacket. Without a word, Alex pulled off his hoodie and draped it over my shoulders. His hands lingered for just a second as he adjusted it, making sure I was warm. I swear, my heart stopped. And when I looked up at him, his expression was so soft, like he wasn't just doing something nice for me, like he wanted to take care of me. That moment stuck with me for days. I told myself it was nothing. That's what brothers do, right? They take care of their sisters. But then I remembered the way my stomach had flipped when he touched me. The way I had secretly wished he would pull me closer instead of stepping back. That's when I realized this wasn't normal. Brothers and sisters don't feel like this about each other. Once I admitted to myself that I had feelings for him, I went into full-blown denial mode. I told myself it was just because we were close, that I was misreading things, that it was just a phase. I even tried dating other people to get my mind off of it. But that only made things worse. Every time I went on a date, I found myself comparing the guy to Alex. No one made me laugh the way he did. No one made me feel as safe or as comfortable. I'd be out with someone else, and my mind would wander to him, what he was doing, if he'd text me, if he'd ask how my date went. And every time he did, I'd find myself secretly wishing he'd sound jealous. God, even typing that makes me feel awful. But the truth is, I wanted him to feel the same way. I wanted to know I wasn't alone in this. It was supposed to be just another normal night. Alex was visiting me for the weekend, and we were doing what we always did, hanging out, eating takeout, and binge watching an old TV show we used to love back in high school. Nothing out of the ordinary. But for some reason, that night felt different. I don't know if it was the way he looked at me earlier in the day, or the fact that we had been spending so much time together lately, or if my brain was just finally acknowledging what my heart had been screaming for months. But something in the air was charged, and I could feel it. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that I was just reading too much into everything, that there was no way he could feel the same way. But then the moment happened. We had been sitting on my couch for hours, laughing and talking between episodes. At some point, I realized how close we were. Our shoulders were touching. Our legs were practically pressed together. And then there was that pause. I don't even remember what we had been talking about before it happened. But suddenly the conversation just stopped. I turned my head slightly to look at him, and he was already looking at me. It wasn't a casual glance. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't brotherly. It was the kind of look that makes your stomach flip and your breath catch in your throat. The kind of look that makes time slow down. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he could hear it. He didn't move. Neither did I. But we didn't need to. The energy between us was so intense, so undeniable, that I knew if I leaned in, even just a little, he would meet me halfway. For a split second, I almost did it. I wanted to, more than anything. But then reality hit me like a truck. He's your brother. Even if not by blood, he's still your family. What would people think? What would mom and dad think? What would this do to everything? My stomach twisted. The panic was instant and overwhelming. I shot up from the couch so fast, I nearly tripped over my own feet. I know I'm tired, I blurted out, my voice shaky and way too loud. I think I'm gonna head to bed. I didn't even look at him as I said it. I couldn't. I rushed to my bedroom before he could respond, my heart still hammering against my ribs. Once I was alone, I pressed my hands against my face and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. What the hell had just happened? Did I imagine it? Was I just being delusional? But then I remembered the way he had looked at me. That wasn't in my head. That wasn't my imagination. Alex had felt it too. I barely slept that night. My mind wouldn't shut up. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I forced a smile, made some coffee, and pretended nothing had happened. But Alex wasn't stupid. He knew something was up. He kept glancing at me, watching me carefully like he was waiting for me to say something. But I didn't. And neither did he. He left later that afternoon. Our goodbye felt stiff, awkward, like we were both hyper-aware that something had shifted between us. Since then, everything has felt off. We still text, we still talk, we still see each other. But there's this tension now. Like we're both tiptoeing around something neither of us wants to admit. And the worst part, I don't want to go back to how things were before. I don't want to ignore what happened. I don't want to pretend I don't have these feelings. But I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should talk to him about it, or if I should just bury this deep down and hope it fades. I don't know if this is wrong, or if I'm just scared of what people will think. All I know is that, in that moment, when we were sitting there in silence, when our eyes locked and everything else faded away, it didn't feel wrong, it felt right. And that terrifies me. We haven't talked about it, but I know he felt it too. The way he acts around me now is off, like he's holding back, like he's waiting for me to say something first. And I don't know what to do. I keep going back and forth in my head. On one hand, we aren't related by blood. We didn't grow up as little kids together, and we didn't have that traditional sibling bond. If we had met as strangers, no one would think twice about us being together. But on the other hand, we did grow up in the same house for a while. Our families see us as siblings. If we admitted our feelings, it could change everything, not just between us, but with our parents, our extended family, even our friends. I keep asking myself, would this be wrong, or am I just scared of what people would think? Part of me wants to just forget about it, to shove these feelings down and move on. But another part of me wonders, what if we're meant to be together? What if we don't move on and just spend our lives dancing around something we both want, but are too afraid to have? I don't know what to do. Do I talk to Alex about it? Do I just ignore it and pretend it never happened? I feel so lost. I'd really appreciate any advice, even if it's harsh. I just need to hear from people outside of my own head. Update 1. Hey everyone. I just wanted to come back and update since my original post got way more attention than I expected. First off, thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts. Whether you were supportive, conflicted, or completely against it, I appreciate the honesty. I read every comment, even the ones that were hard to hear. A lot of people asked if I had talked to Alex yet, and after spending the past few weeks overthinking every possible way this could go wrong, I finally did. And things didn't go exactly how I expected. I didn't plan to bring it up when I did. In fact, I had convinced myself I was just going to bury my feelings and move on. But then Alex came over again last weekend, and the tension between us was unbearable. It was the same as last time, hanging out, eating, watching TV, except now every moment felt charged. Every time our hands brushed, every time I caught him staring at me, every time he hesitated before speaking, I could feel it. And honestly, I couldn't take it anymore. So I just said it, not in a big dramatic way, more like a complete anxious mess. We were sitting on my couch again, and I just blurted out, "Okay, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." He tensed immediately. "Okay?" I took a deep breath and forced the words out. "Did something happen between us last time you were here? Because I feel like something happened, and I don't know if I imagined it or if you felt it too, but I can't stop thinking about it, and it's been driving me insane." So before I could finish rambling, he cut me off. "You didn't imagine it." I swear, my heart stopped. I just sat there, staring at him, trying to process what he had just admitted. I was expecting him to deny it, to laugh it off, to say it was all in my head. But he didn't. He just sat there, looking at me, waiting for me to say something. And suddenly, every ounce of panic I had been carrying around for weeks came crashing down on me. I started over-explaining, saying how I knew it was wrong, how I didn't want to mess up our relationship, how I didn't want to make things weird, how we were supposed to be siblings even though we weren't really, and how I wasn't sure what to do about any of it. Alex let me ramble for a while before he finally spoke. "I don't think it's wrong," he said quietly. That shut me up real quick. He looked nervous, really nervous. He kept rubbing the back of his neck the way he always does when he's trying to find the right words. "I don't know what to do either," he admitted, "but I know that pretending this doesn't exist isn't working." I wanted to cry, not because I was sad, but because hearing him say it out loud made me feel less crazy. I told him everything, how I had been feeling, how I had tried to push it away, how scared I was about what this meant for us. And he told me the same, that he had been struggling with it for a long time, that he had tried dating other people, but always found himself comparing them to me, that he hated how much he wanted to be near me, but felt like he wasn't allowed to want that. Then he said the one thing that completely broke me. "I love you, but I don't know how I'm supposed to love you." And I felt that in my soul. So, where does this leave us? Honestly, I don't know. We both admitted we have feelings for each other. We both admitted we don't know what to do. And we both agreed that we can't just go back to pretending this isn't happening. But at the same time, we're scared. We talked about what this would mean if we actually pursued it, how our family would react, how our friends would see us, how we'd have to deal with the judgment from people who don't understand. And even though we aren't related by blood, we both feel the weight of what this could mean. So for now, we've decided to take space, not to stop talking, but to take a step back and figure out what we actually want. Alex said he didn't want to pressure me into anything, and I told him I didn't want to make a decision based on fear. So we agreed to just think. I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know if we'll decide to be together, or if we'll decide this is too complicated and go our separate ways romantically. But at least now, I know I'm not alone in this. And for now, that's enough. I'll update again if anything changes. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update. I honestly didn't expect to be writing this so soon, but things have changed. A lot. After our last conversation, Alex and I agreed to take some space, to think, to process, to figure out if these feelings were something we could move past. That plan lasted 1 week, and it was horrible. We still texted here and there, but every message felt carefully worded, like we were both forcing ourselves to act normal. We didn't call, we didn't joke around the way we usually did. It felt like there was this invisible wall between us, and I hated every second of it. For the first time in years, I felt like I had lost my best friend. I kept telling myself this was for the best, that it was necessary, that the distance would help us clear our heads. But instead, it made everything worse. Then, one night, I had a terrible day at work, one of those days where everything goes wrong. Normally, Alex would be the first person I'd vent to, but instead I just sat there staring at my phone, feeling like I wasn't allowed to reach out to him. And that's when I realized I don't want a life where I can't talk to him. I don't want a life where we pretend this never happened. So I called him, and the second he picked up, I could tell he felt the same way. He came over that night. At first, we didn't even talk. We just sat on my couch, side by side, in complete silence. But the tension between us was unbearable. Finally, Alex let out a heavy sigh. "I can't do this," he muttered. I turned to him, my heart pounding. "Do what?" "This distance. This pretending. Acting like I don't want to be with you when I do." I sucked in a sharp breath. My chest tightened, my stomach twisted, and I felt like I was on the verge of either throwing up or crying. But I needed to hear him say it. So I asked, "What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his hair, something he always does when he's frustrated or nervous. Then he looked at me, and for the first time, he didn't try to hide it. The longing, the frustration, the pain. "I know this isn't what people would expect," he admitted. "I know it's complicated, but I also know that the way I feel about you isn't wrong." My heart skipped a beat, and suddenly every fear, every ounce of guilt, every sleepless night, spent questioning myself. It all felt so stupid, because the truth was staring me right in the face. I loved him, not just as my best friend, not just as my family. I loved him. So I stopped thinking. For once in my life, I let myself feel. "I love you," I whispered. The words came out before I could stop them, before I could overanalyze or second-guess myself. Alex tensed. His breath hitched. His entire body went still, like he wasn't sure he had heard me right. So I said it again. "I love you, and I don't want to pretend anymore." He let out a breath, shaky, uneven, and then for the first time in weeks, I saw his face relax. He smiled, just a small, soft smile, full of so much relief that it made my chest ache. "I love you too," he said, "and I don't want to fight it anymore." The moment we admitted it, everything changed. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long lifted. I had spent months drowning in fear over these feelings, convinced that what we felt was something we had to suppress, to erase. But it wasn't. It was real. It was honest. It was ours. We talked for hours after that, about our fears, about what this meant, about how we would move forward. We knew this wasn't going to be easy. We knew people wouldn't understand. We knew we would have to be careful, to be mindful of how and when we told people, to prepare ourselves for the inevitable judgment. But at the end of the day, none of that mattered as much as the simple fact that we chose each other. We chose to stop running. We chose to stop pretending. We chose to be together. Even after we had said everything, even after we had laid our feelings bare, it still felt surreal. Then hesitantly, carefully, Alex reached for my hand, and when our fingers intertwined, it didn't feel strange. It didn't feel forbidden. It felt right, like something that had been waiting to happen for a long, long time. That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't rush into anything. Instead, we sat there together, hands entwined, hearts finally aligned. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew without a doubt that I wouldn't have to face it alone. We're taking things slow. We know this isn't something we can just jump into blindly. As for our family, we haven't told them yet. We don't want to hide forever, but we also don't want to just drop a bombshell on them without preparing for their reactions. We've decided to wait a little longer, to make sure we are on solid ground before dealing with their opinions. A few close friends know, and surprisingly they've been more supportive than I expected. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe this will work out, maybe it won't. Maybe our family will accept it. Maybe they won't. Maybe society will always see us as something wrong, no matter how much we know in our hearts that this is right. But I do know one thing. I love him, and I'm not running from it anymore. I'll update again once we talk to our family. Wish us luck. Update 3. Hey everyone, this will be my last update. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. When I first posted, I never imagined how much this story would blow up. I expected judgment, maybe a little support, but I never thought so many people would have such strong opinions, both good and bad. But now, after everything that's happened, I think it's time to close this chapter, at least here. After weeks of going back and forth, debating how to do it, we finally sat our parents down and told them the truth. I wish I could say it went well, but it didn't. At all. Our mom cried. A lot. Our dad just sat there, silent and stiff, like he was processing something he never wanted to process. The disappointment in their eyes was like a punch to the gut. We tried to explain, tried to tell them this wasn't some reckless, impulsive decision, that we had thought about this for months, that we weren't just acting on feelings without considering the consequences, but none of it seemed to matter. The words they kept repeating were, "This isn't right." They didn't care that we weren't biologically related. They didn't care that we had fallen for each other organically, that we weren't raised as siblings from birth, that our bond had shifted in adulthood. All they could see was that we were family, and to them that meant this was wrong. At one point, our dad asked, "Wouldn't it be easier if you just moved on?" And that broke me a little, because yes, it would be easier. But love isn't about choosing the easy route. The conversation ended with a lot of tears, a lot of pain, and no real resolution. They didn't disown us, but the dynamic between us completely changed overnight. Mom barely speaks to me now. When she does, it's clipped, like she's holding back something she wants to say but knows will hurt me. Dad keeps his distance too, not in an outright hostile way, but in a cold way, like I'm not the daughter he thought I was. It hurts. A part of me had held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they would try to understand, that love would outweigh their discomfort. But for now, that's not the case, and I don't know if it ever will be. Through it all, Alex has been my rock. We had a long talk after the disaster with our parents, and we made a decision: we're not giving up on each other. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it sucks that the people we love the most don't support us. But at the end of the day, we have to live our lives for ourselves, not for anyone else. So we're moving forward. We're still taking things slow, still figuring out what our future looks like. But one thing we're sure of, we're in this together. This situation has taught me a lot. I've learned that love isn't always something you can control. It doesn't follow society's rules or fit neatly into a box. I've learned that sometimes family isn't as accepting as you want them to be, and that hurts more than I ever could have imagined. But most importantly, I've learned that happiness is a choice. I could have chosen to let guilt and fear dictate my life. I could have chosen to push Alex away just to make things easier for everyone else. But I didn't. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather fight for a love that makes me happy than settle for a life that makes everyone else comfortable. So, where do we go from here? We're taking things one step at a time. We still hope, deep down, that our family will come around. That maybe, one day, they'll see that this isn't some mistake, that what we have is real. But if they don't, then we'll be okay. Because no matter what happens, we have each other. And for me, that's enough. Thank you to everyone who followed this journey. Whether you supported us or not, I appreciate everyone who took the time to read, comment, and share their thoughts. This is where I leave it. This is our story, and we're writing the rest of it together. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this post and subscribe for more. What do you think about this situation? Comment below and let me know. Would you fight for love no matter what? Or walk away for the sake of family? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk in the comments.